Welcome back to the Deeply Rested podcast. Today, we're talking about almost nobody's favorite topic, marketing. Whether you're writing blog posts, recording podcast interviews, or attending networking events, allowing yourself to be seen is essential for any small business owner. But for many entrepreneurs, the fear of being seen prevents you from spreading the word about your incredible business. From the fear of rejection to the fear of burning out, we avoid visibility while feeling guilty we're not doing more to market our services. Mai-kee Tsang, the Sustainable Visibility Mentor, is here to share her wisdom about overcoming fears and avoiding burnout using her Sustainable Visibility method. Mai-kee is an ICF-certified trauma-conscious leadership coach who helps human-first business owners get heard and hired for their work in the world. With the power of sustainable visibility, Mai-kee will help you show up consistently in your business, not constantly, without compromising your capacity, boundaries, or bottom line in the process. We originally recorded this conversation for my fundraising event, the Rest and Success Code, and I am so excited to be sharing it with you again today. So, take a deep breath and enjoy this conversation with Mai-kee Tsang. Welcome to Deeply Rested, the podcast that helps people doing good work in the world take incredibly good care of themselves. I'm your host, retired therapist and disillusioned business coach, Megan Megginson. I'm on a mission to help people like you unlearn the rules that keep you trapped in self-doubt so that you can recover from burnout and finally become deeply rested. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and join our weekly newsletter at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. Now, it's time for the show. Hello, Mai-kee. Welcome.
Hey, Megan. Thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here for season 3.
Oh my gosh. It is such an honor to have you here. You and I have connected before. You came into one of my coaching communities and gave a beautiful workshop. And it was so beautiful that I knew I had to have you on this series to talk about sustainable visibility with the masses. And before we dive into this conversation, I want to give our listeners a little bit of context because you and we're very similar, and we share a lot of similarities with the people listening into this series as well, in that we are both highly sensitive and highly ambitious, which means we have big dreams, but like a very limited energetic capacity to realize those dreams. And I love so much that you have created a business that caters specifically to people like us around themes of visibility and marketing and being seen, and doing so with like consent practices. It's everything that you do, Mai-kee, speaks to me on such a deep level. And I am really honored to have you here today to share your wisdom with us about sustainable visibility.
Well, thanks so much for saying all of that, because I think oftentimes our own ICA, our ideal customer avatar, is often a past version of ourselves,
100%. Mm-hmm.
And when you find that the majority of what you see, quote unquote, out there is catered for people who don't have the same circumstances, identities, or lived experiences as you, we can often feel a lot of pressure to kind of like chase and try to like follow along and run after those because you don't see anything else. And so those is normally situations like that when I find myself thinking, well, if it's not created yet, or at least not in a way that I want, I'll create it then. Why am I waiting for someone else to do it? Yeah. And I'm so glad that this work has really spoken to you, because you know how sometimes we can be so in our heads and wondering, is anything I'm doing making a difference? So for you to actually say that back to me, it really means a lot. So thank you.
You are so welcome. And you said several things right there. We could spend this whole interview talking about understanding that the people you want to serve are often a version of past parts of you, and that you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for someone else to create the thing that you want. You can create it yourself. think that is such an important lesson. Now, before we dive deep into the sustainability conversation, I want to talk about visibility. I want to talk about what you mean by the word visible. And specifically, when you talk about visibility, what strategies are you referring to?
Oh, such a good question. That kind of like breaks into little branches. I'm like, which branch do I kind of like target at the moment? Because when I think of visibility, I personally do not synonymize it with the word exposure, because when I hear the word exposure, which is often positioned as a good thing, when I've been approached before, it's like, oh, you're going to get this much exposure. And it's normally a numbers game. It's normally like, oh, we have X amount of listeners or X amount of subscribers. You'll have exposure to all of these people. And I never loved that word because it reminds me of when I used to read tabloid magazines when I was a teenager. And it would always be like, expose celebrity X doing this or that. Like, oh my gosh, they're going to a supermarket like a normal human. And there would always be paparazzi pictures of them being caught off guard. And so I've never personally loved that feeling of exposure. Instead, when I think of visibility, I think about being seen with your own consent.
Being seen with your own consent. Okay, that's really important. Visibility, I'm going to repeat it again. Visibility is being seen with your own consent. So when we talk about visibility today in this interview, and we're talking specifically to entrepreneurs, small business owners, service providers, however you identify yourself, when we talk about visibility, we are talking about anything that you do to allow yourself to be seen, hopefully by your target market, your ideal clients, but it's the things you're doing to be seen consensually. You are choosing to show up and to reveal yourself in a particular way. Give us some examples of ways that your clients like to show up and be seen with consent.
What I find is the biggest difference is that whenever they do show up, it's intentional. It's not forceful or pressurized or for the sake of it. And the word intentional has been used over and over and over again by my very respected peers and my clients. They told me, you don't show up, quote unquote, consistently. And what they mean by that is like, I'm not always showing up constantly. I'm not on videos every day. I'm not releasing podcast episodes every day. I'm not writing every day. But whenever I do, they can tell that there's been so much thought that's gone into it, a lot of intention. And so that's what makes them stick. And something like a wonderful piece of feedback I've received from quite a few of my community members is that they don't even read my subject lines sometimes for my emails. They just open it or save it. Some of them told me, hey, I have a specific folder of just your emails just so that I can save them and read them later. And it's because of that trust that was developed over the course of time, because anytime I was visible, it was with so much intention and thought that they feel that, and they're okay not being bombarded with things from me every single day, because they know whenever I do show up, it counts.
Right. It doesn't feel like a bombardment when we are hungry to receive.
Exactly. Yeah. And we need to remember that, like, yes, of course, it's important to stay top of mind, but frequency doesn't have to be the only way that we do that. You know, it can be intention instead.
Right. I love that. Yes. Because frequency in so many ways is arbitrary. Okay, I'm going to do 3 Instagram reels and 1 email newsletter and 2 blog posts and 1 podcast episode. It's arbitrary. They're numbers that you're making up. But when you're really bringing deep intention to the way that you are being seen and connecting with your audience can feel it. They can feel that this was an intentional stepping into the spotlight and not just I should do this. We can feel the difference. I think that's why people put your emails in a folder, because they know, oh, this is coming from a deep intentional place. You're sharing right now casually so many different ways people can be visible. And I want us to name them explicitly so that people can really start to imagine into the different ways that one can show up to be visible. You mentioned recording videos for social media, writing email newsletters, recording your own podcast or being a guest on someone else's podcast, getting quoted in media articles. These are all ways that we can show up to be visible. Any other common examples coming to mind for you, ways that people can be visible?
So I do want to say that, in my opinion, and I've been talking about sustainable visibility for 3 years now at the time of this recording, and like this conversation, it still seems so new, and I'm like, it's not new, at least not to me anyway. But one thing I do want to emphasize as well, that being seen doesn't have to be in a group setting. It can actually be on a one-on-one setting as well, which can probably give a huge sigh of relief for those of you thinking that you have to be on all these like in real life or digital stages. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a time and place for that, but not all of us have the capacity to sustain that level of visibility for the long term.
Right.
So in between, it's about finding those pockets, those places where you can, again, show up and be very intentional with the things that you're speaking about. And so one way that I do this in my own business is, this is a practice I've been doing for nearly 4 years now at the time of this recording. And actually, when this interview gets released, it would reach the 4-year anniversary of
happy anniversary.
Thank you. I don't want to call it a strategy, but because it wasn't ever intended to be. So what I do every single month is I set aside just 1 hour and I split it into 3 20-minute calls. I send an invitation out to my email list at complete random every single month. It's never at the same time. It's never on the same day of the week, or it's never at the same week of the month either. It's at complete random. And those calls are simply to connect. There's no hidden sales call. There's no market research agenda. It's not a brain picking session. It's literally just to connect. And over the course of time, I've personally connected with over like nearly 150 of my personal community members, like on really deep conversations. And it's the way that I have sustained being connected, honoring my capacity. And I found that it's become almost like a little game for my community, because it's almost like a little race. For those on my email list, they're like, oh, I've only slots left. I just sent one out yesterday and all 3 got booked within 11 minutes. And the fastest record has been 3 minutes. The reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I'm being visible to these individuals, like one at a time, but they're really deep connections. And you might want to remind yourself as well that you don't have to reach every single person by yourself. You can actually reach people by having deep relationships. And when they talk about you, your ripple of impact spreads like that. So it's like depth over breadth. And I've always been visible like that. And another example would be actually what happened between us when we first connected. You invited me into your space. So doing guest workshops in private communities. That is one of my favorite ways to be visible as well, because it's a lot more intimate. And when there is intimacy, is often a beautiful space to deepen a relationship because of the amount of trust that's already present.
Yeah. I love this. This is actually, you call them your monthly cuppas.
Is that right? Cup of catch-ups. Yeah.
Cup of catch-ups. Yeah. So cute. And that's actually, I don't think I told you this. It's how I became aware of you, because one of my coaching clients came to me one day and was like, oh, I'm so excited. I got a cup of ketchup with Mai-kee. And I was like, well, who's Mai-kee and what's a cup of ketchup? I had no idea. And, and she told me about you, and I think she had found you through your podcast. She had been on your email list, and she had wanted to grab one of these connection sessions with you for a long time. And she finally got it, and she was so happy. And as she was telling me more about you and the work that you do, I was like, I need to know this person and who this person is. I reached out, we connected, you came into my community. Now you're here on the Rest and Success Code. And so this really is a testament to depth over breadth, right? That you went deep with one person, and then that one person told me about you, and now you are here, and why my mind is blown. It's just it speaks to the magic that happens when we show up intentionally, and when we allow ourselves not just to be seen, like jazz hands, look at me, I'm smart, I'm fancy, I'm shiny, but we allow ourselves to be known, and we allow ourselves to be in community and in relationship with the people that are in our audience. It's like that's where the magic really happens for me in this work. Okay, wonderful examples of so many different ways that you can be visible. And really what I'm taking away is that you can be visible in any way that feels good to you. And probably, most people with really thriving businesses find ways to be visible in many different places. So there's one-on-one visibility, there's coming and speaking in other people's audiences, there's writing emails to your newsletter list. There are so many different ways of being seen. We do have to be seen if we want our businesses to thrive. We need our people to know that we exist. And then when we pull those people into our worlds, we need to nurture those relationships in really meaningful and intentional ways, exactly as you were describing. And yet, Mai-kee, so many people, especially sensitive entrepreneurs, are really afraid of visibility. I want to hear your thoughts on why people have so much resistance to marketing, visibility, nurturing their audience. What's up with that?
Oh, this could be so many different reasons. And the first two things that come up for me is safety and fear of being cancelled, or fear of any sort of public rejection, I guess I should say. There's so many words that I can use to spin on this, but there's a big fear of getting things wrong in the public eye.
Yeah.
And there's a genuine sense of safety that may not be honored. To be honest with you, the whole reason why I started talking about sustainable visibility in the first place was because my own safety was compromised when I was listening to someone else's advice, who didn't take into account the lenses that I had. And it was also because I didn't do... I know now when I look in retrospect that I should have listened to my instincts instead of simply taking someone else's word over my own nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
And what had happened was that I was visible in a space that wasn't nurtured for me, or it wasn't the most aligned space, let's just say. And unfortunately, it attracted people to me that sent me a flurry of inappropriate sexual messages in my DMs, and that really reactivated a trauma wound that was still fairly fresh at that time. And it made me, it made me want to shrink and hide under a rock and never to be seen again, because that really threatened my own sense of physical, psychological safety. And that's what's made me very conscious about not revealing identifying information of my location, or sharing faces of my family. It's all been stemmed from this particular incident that happened, let's just say, I think about 3 or 4 years ago now. And so safety is a very genuine reason, for having resistance to being visible, because unless we centralize our safety, and I'm not equating safety with being small, by the way. I think that's a myth. When people say, oh, you're playing it safe. And I'm like, yeah, damn right. I'm honoring my nervous system. But I personally think you can expand your safety zone the more and more that you do it with your own consent. Again, that this feels good. I'm willing to expand here, but I'm not going to force myself to do something if it's at that cost.
Right. Yes. Safety. People are afraid of being visible because they can feel intuitively that their sense of safety is compromised for whatever reason. It doesn't even matter what the reason is. If you feel unsafe being seen, you are really going to struggle with visibility activities or marketing activities for your business. So safety is one thing that holds people back from being seen. Talk a little bit more now about this fear of rejection, fear of being canceled.
There are some folks in my particular community that may have something called, I think it's rejection sensitivity. I can't remember what the third word is. Oh, dysphoria. Yes, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I think it's a part of their neurodivergence. And so anytime they feel a sense of rejection, is naturally amplified because of the lens that they have. And it's not necessarily something that they they don't choose to have it. It's just how they see the world, how they interpret information. But even for those without rejection and sensitivity dysphoria, it can feel very personal again, especially for sensitive souls. Like, I'm not entirely sure if I identify with having it, but I've always been a sensitive person, and it was always used and weaponized kind of against me. But and it can really take a toll on somebody when they have that sense, they question themselves, they question their actions, their words, and not everybody can get straight back up right away. Right. And keep moving forward. It takes time to really articulate all of those emotions and navigate, what to do next. And so it can often feel like a very unsafe place and a very unforgiving place to make mistakes in public. And so that's why I think underneath all of this, it's so important to show up in spaces that feel incredibly aligned to you, where you feel like you have matching values with someone who you're collaborating with. So when I get invitations to speak, on summits or podcasts or something, and I don't know who they are, I have to do my due diligence. Sometimes I see if we have any mutual connections, and I will actually do something called a safety check. This is something that one of my peers taught me when she did a safety check asking me about a particular someone that we both knew. And I did one to one of my other friends asking about a certain person, just to kind of like lay the land. And we're always so respectful of the fact that, and we're not asking you to out this person. It's just like, what's your experience been like, to whichever degree you're open to sharing. And so what happened with my most recent safety check, they were actually pretty nice when I connected with them, but of course you do you. So I reached out to this person, asking if they were open to jumping on a get to know you kind of chat, just to kind of make sure that we're on the same page for the kind of conversation that they were intending for us to have on his podcast. And when I got to know him, I was like, oh, we're wonderful, like, potential for friendship here. Like, we got along straight away, which is wonderful. But I wouldn't have known that had I not done a safety check. So being very mindful of who you associate yourself with and who you're choosing to collaborate with, that can really help on the safety part. And it will very likely reduce the potential of rejection, because the space that you're about to enter is ready for your ideas.
I would love to just go a little bit deeper into this idea of the safety check. Can you, have you operationalized this in your mind? Is it like the safety check is like I do these 3 things to, kind of check in, create connection, and make sure it's a safe place for me to show up? Or is it something that's a little more nebulous in process?
I would say it's case by case. So for full transparency, I've only had one peer of mine ask me to do a safety check, and I've only done one, to ask a peer to do a safety check with me. So I've only done this, I've received it once and I've done it once.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fairly new, but it's a great practice in my back pocket should I ever feel the need to, because of course I can 100% do my due diligence, right? And I do, of course. I don't just leave it to my peer to tell me and I don't just trust their word for it, not because they're not trustworthy, but because their experiences can very well vary from mine. And so it's just kind of another layer.
Yeah. So I want to make sure I understand this. And here's why I want to go deeper into this. I think this is a really interesting idea. I think that since COVID, when everybody went virtual, it suddenly became very hard to have actual conversations with other people. It's people are busy. I totally get it. But it has made creating one-on-one connections with people you want to collaborate with, people you want to support, people you want to get to know, maybe refer clients to. It's made it really quite challenging. And the expectation, especially in the online space, is often that you say yes to things without ever having met the person first. So you say yes, and then the very first time you meet them is when you show up to do the interview. Or the expectation is that you refer people their way before you ever have a conversation with them. And I do think that's, while it requires less time from everyone, which is nice, it actually increases the likelihood that we partner with people who aren't aligned with our values, or we walk into situations that do compromise our safety. So I'm really intrigued right now, Mai-kee, by this idea of a safety check. So let's say there's somebody's podcast you want to be on their podcast, or they invited you. You don't know this person, you haven't met this person before, and you're like, okay, I want to say yes to this invitation, but first I need to do a safety check to make sure we're values aligned and to make sure it's a safe space for me. What's the first thing that you do at that point to initiate the safety check?
So I think I would do two things. One would be the safety check via a peer, and another would be a safety check by me asking them if they're open to jumping on a call. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, if they're not willing to jump on a call with me before they're asking me to be on their podcast or their summit, I would actually probably politely decline the invitation. Mm-hmm. Because to me, I only really want to collaborate with people who are open to taking the time, because it's not just for me, it's ultimately for them to know that we are a genuine fit, and the things that I could talk about can really help their audience. And I always position it that way. I'm always making sure like, hey, I just want to make sure, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I really love the idea of it. And I just want to make sure that we're on the same page here. And to ensure that the thing you want me to speak about can really be a fit for your audience. So if you're open, we can, jump on a 15-minute Zoom call, or if you prefer Voxer, that's also okay. So give them options, and because they may be super busy people and may prefer a more asynchronous sort of way of doing things. So yay for Voxer.
Yes.
And if they say a flat out no to that, that tells me that I get that it takes more time. I completely respect that. Mm-hmm. I respect that, we're busy people. And then I'll be able to know for myself, okay, I'm going to take a step back. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'd much rather create space for someone who is willing to do this with you without needing to do this kind of get to know you kind of call. And, if I know someone who could be a better fit, I'm more than happy to send them a referral. But to me, it's not worth compromising, not knowing them. I won't compromise my position, my reputation even, because I have been called in before. I've been called in quite suddenly by a couple of my community members once when I did the collaboration with someone who, of course, I'm not going to name names, but I was on a panel with someone who is very well known for what they do and not for the best reasons, let's just say. But I chose to say yes, not because of that person, but because of who the host was. And I had a great relationship with them. So I did feel like I was really juggling my options. And I was like, oh, I really don't know. And when I had the experience, and I was called in, I was like, I thought you said that that you don't align with so-and-so. Like, why are you on this panel with them? And then that was a great reminder for me. I was like, yeah, you're right. And I had the experience. It actually wasn't great whatsoever because of the misalignment there. And I don't think it was actually really helpful for those who tuned in. And so it just goes to show that it has to go through several checks. It needs to be through the alignment check, and who else is on this collaboration, and if there's a relevant peer who I can really trust to do the safety check with, to ask them to do that with me. So there's a lot of choices to make.
This is great. And so final question about the safety check. When you are doing the safety check with a peer, and this peer is someone who has connected with this potential partner or collaborator in the past, what questions are you asking them?
So first of all, I reach out to them, letting them know that this is a unconventional ask. So I'm just really setting the expectations here. And I'm always ensuring that, look, I'm not asking you to call out anyone or for any explicit details or anything like that. It's just a general vibe to whichever degree they are open to sharing with me. And I would tell them why I'm doing it. Normally, whenever I tell the why, people are a lot more open. Yeah. I would say, this person has actually invited me to be a part of their summit or be on their podcast. And the thing is, I haven't met them before. And while I'll of course do my due diligence, I see that you're already you're a mutual connection. And so I was wondering if you'd be open to sharing anything about your experience with them thus far.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I would, of course, if they're not comfortable with it, I would never push further, because nothing is more important to me than the relationships I have with my peers and with my communities. So I would go along with something like that. So I was just let them know it's an unconventional ask. I tell them what I'm asking of them and why I'm doing it, and I'll leave it, put the ball in their court, so to speak.
Right.
But
No pressure.
Okay, no pressure, but I'm asking you because I trust you, sort of thing.
Mai-kee, this is really so fresh. Like this is like a really fresh take on how do we engage in marketing relationships, visibility relationships, collaborative partnerships. How do we engage in these relationships from a more informed perspective, so that we go into the relationships feeling really safe, and really both parties have had a chance to consent to, yes, I agree, I want to step in to this experience together. This feels really powerful. There are two reflections I want to share about this idea of the safety check. One is coming back to what you said at the beginning of this conversation about, visibility is being seen on your own terms. It's being seen with your own consent. And I hear that in the safety check, there is this invitation every step of the way for you to be practicing consent with yourself. I think we often talk about consent with other people, that we are consenting for another person to do or engage with us in a certain way, but we don't talk as often about the process of consent between me, myself, and I. Am I really checking in with myself? Do I consent with me to step into this relationship or into this experience? And the safety check feels like this really clear process that allows you to gift yourself consent to step into a visibility opportunity. So there's something about that feels really special and important. And the other reflection that I want to offer here about the safety check is I'm just really witnessing the way that you detach from expectation and detach from any sort of scarcity. And what I mean is that many people, especially when your business is smaller, newer, you're growing, you feel like any publicity is good publicity. Any visibility is good visibility. You're so desperate to be seen and recognized that you're willing to say yes to any opportunity that comes your way. And in so many ways, I think that default reaction is rooted in scarcity, right? There's not enough. I have to be seen. I have to take whatever I'm offered or whatever I'm given. And when I listen to you talk about sustainable visibility and doing these safety checks, I'm really struck by how confident you are in letting opportunities pass you by. Do you have anything you want to say about that? It's a very different perspective in the marketing visibility arena.
I mean, I feel like it's really important for me to say right now that I'm now in a position where I am more selective, and I totally appreciate that anybody who may be listening right now may be thinking, well, good for you, Mai-kee, because you got so many coming towards you that you get to pick and choose like that. But I'm not in a position like that. And you're right. We're all in different positions. So please do take everything I'm saying with a pinch of salt. And what I would say here is, it's just really weighing out your costs. Like, what is the cost of you saying yes? What is the cost for you saying no? And for me, my mental well-being, my personal sense of safety is the highest cost there is. And there is nothing that I will do to compromise that. And that probably does speak to the fact that I am in a, relatively privileged position where I can be more selective. I'm in a very stable, sort of home situation. And so even if I earned a bit less in my business, I would still have a roof over my head. I would still have food on the table. And I appreciate not everybody is in a position like that. I also don't have any kids right now, aside from my cat children. I have 2 wonderful cats. But yeah, I feel like it's really important for me to say that first and foremost.
Yes, and I think that the conversation you're having here is offering an invitation for all of us in business to think about marketing and visibility in a different way. And I think that we're really quick when we're new in business and we don't have stability yet. We're really quick to give away our authority and our boundaries because we think we have to in order to succeed. And sometimes we have to make hard decisions, no doubt about it. But I think you're offering a new perspective here that, hey, actually, you can create really powerful relationships, collaborative partnerships with full consent. And you can say no to anything that doesn't feel right to you. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's really about power dynamics. When we're new in business, we feel like we have no power, and we feel like people who are, quote, more successful than us have all of the power. So we're very quick to do whatever they say because we just want to succeed. And again, sometimes we have to make hard decisions. But what you're really inspiring me to think about today, Mai-kee, is that actually I don't have to sacrifice my sense of safety. I don't have to sacrifice my boundaries in order to be seen as a business owner, as a person who is selling something or has something to say. I just wonder if we all tried to approach visibility in our businesses through this lens of safety and consent, if there could be a real trickle-down effect that could potentially change the way we navigate this landscape across the board, not just for those of us who have privilege and authority. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I absolutely love that you're talking about this. And yeah, I mean, like, we all start from somewhere. And I'll be very honest with you. At face value, it looks like I turn a lot of things away, and that the cost of not having this visibility, it can feel like that at this, at face value. But the thing is, I know because I've been told many, many, many times how people really respect how I uphold my boundaries and just like really live out through my values. And they see me as someone with integrity, which is a humongous honor to hear. And I think that's why, because I look at my stats for my email list, when people join, because I'm only ever showing up in like super aligned spaces. When people join, they stay very often for years at a time. And there are people coming out of the woodworks, to work with. Part of me is like, respectfully, who are you? And then they'll tell me that, I've been following you for years. I'm like, have you? Because they don't always show themselves. Right. But all that to say that they will show up for you when it really counts. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I will have to say that the reason why I'm able to be sustainably visible is because it's very much because of my amazing relationships that I've really taken the time to cultivate with new people, and for people that I've already connected with, like yourself, for example. The relationship only deepens over time, and just being very conscious of whose spaces I'm going into, doing those safety checks as and when, acknowledging the season that I'm in, the kind of capacity I have, because when I'm at extremely low capacity, I call it the 3 E's. It's the essentials, the enhancements, and the embellishments. So when I'm in essentials mode, I know I'm very unlikely to do things on video. I may do a podcast every now and then, but my default actually is writing. So even though I'm actually a verbal processor, when I have very little capacity at all, I default to a lot of writing. And it's why my relationship with my email list is very strong, because I email them at least once a week, several times a week, but it's never at the same time. It's just kind of as and when. But I set that expectation as soon as they join my email list. It's in the welcome email. It's like, hey, it's like an open faced sandwich. The structure at the very beginning, the rest is organic. And so that's the essentials mode. But when I'm in my enhancements, that is when I'm like, okay, I have a bit more wiggle room to do a couple of things. Maybe I'll do a couple of videos. Maybe I'll do more podcast episodes and guesting. So that's when I'm like doing like a very small number of collaborations. But then when I've got a lot of capacity and I feel very supported in my life as well as my business, then I'll go into embellishments mode. It's like, oh, what are the things that I've been putting off for a while? Like pitching myself to speak on a stage, or, to finally get around to doing my TED Talk, or doing a, pitching to the media. Those really big things that aren't necessary for me to get by. That's a nice boost, And so, yeah, I feel like you're about to say something. And before do, I just want to say, for each and every one of you who's listening right now, I recommend you start looking into your own version of what it means to have your essentials, your enhancements, and your embellishments. So the way I visualize it is like 3 concentric circles. So if you think of like a bullseye, like a target, the very center, the bullseye, is your essentials. And then when you go out a ring, then that is the enhancements. And you go out to the outer ring, and that is the embellishments. And it's all based on what season you're in, and therefore the capacity you have, the way you like expressing yourself. Like, what are you like? What's the biggest difference when you have a lot of capacity and minimal capacity? Like, what can you do in each of those seasons?
Amazing. I love the image of the bullseye, the concentric circles, essential, enhancement, embellishments. And I love that we are rounding out our interview with this topic, because my last question for you was to see if you would talk about how people can work with their fear of being overwhelmed. Why are people afraid of being visible? Well, they don't feel safe, right? They're afraid of being wounded, of being hurt. They have fear of rejection. They're afraid of being canceled, or of there being negative social consequences around being seen in the wrong way. And the other one that I think is the most common in my world and my work with clients is the fear of overwhelm and burnout. I'm just already so taxed from delivering services, from tending to my life. Like, the thought of having to market, having to be visible, it drains me. And I think you are providing such a beautiful solution to the problem of overwhelm, of like, let's really think about the way that you're showing up and being seen in relation to your energetic capacity, and allowing that to be really organic. I really appreciate that too, Mai-kee, that, some days all you can do are the essentials, but some days you're actually feeling so resourced and supported. Like, I can just jump right up to embellishments. I can do something like really special and extra because I have the capacity to do so. But this only works when you get clear in your strategy about what activities belong in which category for you. I think that's something I'm really noticing in our conversation today, is the beautiful way that you balance systems and strategy, like pencil to paper. Here's what we're doing. Let's write it down. It's very, very clear, with organic evolution that we can like grow and shift and change. We don't have to anticipate it. We can meet ourselves exactly where we're at. But it's the dance between these two. It's the dance between the systematic and the organic that really creates sustainable visibility for you in your work as a business owner. Am I understanding that correctly, do you think?
Yeah. It's something that it requires knowing yourself so well, and it takes time. Like, before I started compartmentalizing all of this into, the 3E model, or there's actually an analogy or metaphor. I always like,
no worries. We know what you mean.
But I think it may be helpful in this conversation about capacity. I know that we're starting to wrap up soon, but may I share it with you?
Oh, please. I'm here for it.
All right. So if I were to tell you, hey, so I'm going to go to Hong Kong to meet up with my grandmother, and Hong Kong is about 14 hours away.
Okay.
Would I be able to see her in 14 hours from now? Yes or
no? Yes.
Well, technically no, because like, if I said, hey, like, granted, like, if I'm still in the UK and it takes me 14 hours by plane to get there, would I be able to see her in 14 hours?
Okay, no, you'd have travel time, you'd have packing time, you'd have to drive to her. Okay,
exactly.
No.
Right. So here's the thing. When most folks actually start doing a lot of visibility activities, they only think of the time it takes to do the activity. but not what happens before and after. So I call this the 3 A's. The first A is anticipation. So before you go onto a plane, you would have to pack your bags. You'd have to go to the airport and go through security, all of that jazz, right? And that can take quite a couple of hours. And then it's the actual plane ride itself. And then after that, sometimes we're not always the most energetic after we leave a plane. And so, we need to collect our luggage. We need to go to the hotel or Airbnb, probably chill out just to really get over some jet lag and probably get a nap in. If it's ideal to have a nap, sometimes you got to stay up. Point is that there's very minimal consideration for what happens before and after. So the first A is the anticipation, how you're actually feeling before you do the thing. And then the action is the plane ride, like how long it's taking to actually get to the place you want to go. But then it's the aftermath. So you said about the overwhelm, you said about the burnout, and it's because there's very minimal allocation of capacity to deal with the aftermath of something. So you and I were speaking about how summits are a huge amount of work, but it can be worth it to do it. But it's probably going to take some, downtime to recharge and rejuvenate to kind of come back from after that because it's such a big task, right? But if you don't plan that in, if you don't plan that time in, then you're very likely to go into burnout mode because you haven't taken into account the aftermath. So that's what each and every person I would recommend and suggest that you take into account. When you look at a visibility strategy, don't just think about how long it's going to take you to write that blog post or to do the actual interview or to deliver your keynote speech, whatever it is. Like, don't just think about that, but think of the prep it's going to take you and what you need to do for yourself afterwards just to kind of get back up to speed. And that's going to require you to rest. This is all about the rest and success code, right? So rest is essential. It's not optional. It's essential. So it's kind of like making sure that you have some space and in your calendar and mental space as well, just to kind of like calm down from the plane ride and let yourself like get through the quote unquote jet lag of the visibility.
What was the second A?
Action.
Action. Right. Okay. I'm writing
so
this down.
action is when you're doing the thing. So if we use this current interview that we are doing right now for Rest and Success. So the action is the hour or so that you and I have taken out of our time to do the interview. Right. But before then, you asked, your team asked me to fill out some forms, put in a headshot, sign a speaker agreement. So that was considering the anticipation, right? And then the aftermath would be after we do this interview, I'm going to think about promotional angles, especially when, of course, this interview goes live in preparation for the rest of the Rest and Success Code, conversations that you're going to have and the time I need to allocate in my calendar for these promotions. So this is one visibility strategy that's happening right now. But can you see that I already know what it takes for me to say yes, because I know the prep that happens before and what happens after the interview for me to really do my part for you.
Yeah. Yes. First of all, you are the queen of alliterations.
Thank you.
So,
you'll probably see that across all of my work.
I'm like the 3 E's, the 3 A's. I'm here for it. In all seriousness, this is so incredibly wise. It took me years to figure this out as a business owner that I was really bad at anticipating the aftermath. And probably anticipating the anticipation as well, that it is so easy to just think about the fun thing, which is like the showing up and doing it, the recording the interview. But yeah, it takes time to prep. It takes time to do the after tasks as well as the rest and the recharge that has to come after being visible as well. Because no matter what type of visibility you are experimenting with, if it's writing, speaking, connecting one-on-one, it drains the battery. And if you don't have a strategy for recharging that battery after being seen and visible, you are going to burn yourself out. And then that old narrative gets reinforced that I don't have enough energy. I can't do this. It's going to overwhelm me. It's not going to feel safe. We don't bring any of this baggage with us into our businesses. It comes from societal conditioning, capitalistic conditioning, family of origin conditioning. But we do a really good job of reinforcing the baggage that we bring into our businesses with us. And I think what you are doing in your work and in all of the wisdom that you've shared with us today is you're giving us strategies that we can use to stop that cycle so that we can start to create a new relationship with visibility within ourselves, looking at defining how it is that you want to be visible, really understanding the fears that hold you back from being visible, creating safety checks and safety strategies that make being visible really feel so safe that you can consent to showing up and being seen, and then looking at the 3 E's or the 3 A's, all strategies to help you match your visibility strategies with your energetic capacity. Mai-kee, we covered a ton of ground today, and you have shared a generous amount of wisdom with us. So deep, deep gratitude to you for the work that you're doing and for everything that you shared here with this audience today. Before we wrap up, I have one fun little bonus question. If you're down for it.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Well, I'm asking everyone on the Rest and Success Code this season the same question. A theme that I'm coming back to in a lot of these interviews is really looking at how our businesses can pay us in more than just money, right? Because hopefully we are all creating businesses that really serve us and our lives first. I want to help people create wealthy lives in all of the ways that matter. And real wealth is about a lot more than just money. So I'm really curious to know, what is one way your business pays you in something other than money?
Relationships, by far.
Oh my gosh. Say more about that, please.
When I think of an alternative life, if I didn't have a business, I can't even begin to imagine all of the people who actually wouldn't be in my life, who I have today. And it breaks my heart to think that I wouldn't have met all of these incredible people who have become such dear friends. And I'm so happy and honestly so honored to know all of these people who are doing such amazing things. And it's just like how they're going about it. Because when I speak to my friends and they tell me about their corporate woes and the kind of stuff they have to handle with their coworkers or stuff, I think to myself, wow, I honestly forget how much of a privilege it is to be able to be a lot more selective of the kind of people who kind of come into my world, especially as a highly sensitive person, to be able to have choice over who you let in is incredible. And so my business by far pays me by helping me meet people that I honestly can't imagine my life without them.
Wow. I feel that so deeply in my own heart as well, that some of the most important players in my life right now, dearest friends, are people that I met through my work. And yet I hadn't named that in my own list of ways my business is paying me in other than money. So more gratitude to you for sharing that reflection. Your business pays you in really rich relationships. That is so special and so important. And Mai-kee, the work you're doing in the world is incredible. It's such a gift. Thank you so much for being here. I am so happy to know you.
Thank you so much as well for how we were able to, because we both said like, hey, let's see where this conversation can go, and look where it did go because of the beauty, your curiosity, your inquisitiveness, and just your willingness to hear this way of approaching visibility. I can't thank you enough. And yes, you are one of the people that I'm talking about in terms of the, these rich friendships. They're truly wonderful. So thank you so much for having me here.
You are welcome. I really hope this conversation with Mai-kee has helped you rethink your relationship with marketing and visibility. I love Mai-kee's ideas, and I think she may hold the key many of us need to be visible and deeply rested. If you want to learn more from Mai-kee, subscribe to her Inside Insights newsletter at maikeetsang.com/inside insights, or get her $9 Cuppa Catch-Ups mini workshop. This is an example of her sustainable visibility strategy. You can find that at maikeetsang.com/Cuppa. I will put all of these links in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to the Deeply Rested podcast. I'll talk to you again next week. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Deeply Rested. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love to invite you to join the Deeply Rested weekly newsletter. You can sign up at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. I hope to meet you in my inbox very soon.